What's up, people? It's Jeffrey Kaminsky back here with Part 2 of Learn from Your PR series, where I basically just go through the film from my recent testing cycle and offer some insight that hopefully you can apply to your own training. Now, last week is all about the deadlift and overhead press, the lifts I actually care about, but I gotta give the squat and bench some love, and that's what this video is for. Now, the squat and I have an interesting relationship. My junior year was actually my best lift. I got out at the 365. Which isn't too impressive in the grand scheme of things, but for a kid who had no idea how to breathe and brace correctly, it was pretty good. So I had a lot of potential going into my senior year, but then some guy from Wuhan decided to eat a bat, and then all my squat potential went like this. And yeah, like many of you, I did not have a squat rack during quarantine, so all that potential I built up, just getting a little more complicated. And then, when I could actually lift again, and I was excited to get the weight back on my back, wrestling decided to f my ankle over. So then all that potential just got even worse. And then, when that started healing, the other ankle got worse. So, this is where my squat was going into this last program, just as a basis for you guys to understand where I'm coming from. There are plenty of times I was set back just to squatting with the empty bar, and even that hurt ton. But if you're doing this long enough, you're going to run through that at some point in your career, so it's good to have that experience early on. Anytime I was squatting and my ankle bent at all, it really hurt. So since a squat would make my ankles yell at me every time I tried to do it, we spent some less time together, and I spent more time with her more attractive older sister and her beautiful cousin, and we got some good gains from it. Excuse me. So yeah, my squat is a little bit of a mess right now. Let's see how messy it really is. Alrighty, we're here at the squat commentary. Let's get right into it. So, like I said, I got 365 squat as my max my junior year. Quarantine and my little glass ankles made squatting a little bit difficult, so now I'm in the rebuilding phase. And one of the best lifts I've achieved so far was 335 on a pause squat, where you use pause at the bottom and explode up. Also, here's this. Good old Zercher squat. These are some of my favorites. Weight feels really heavy when you do this, but you can get it easy up just like that. But now we go to my testing day, where we start at 315. Just think about all my cues. Getting my bar set on my back, big breath, explode up. Get my little drop steps. Flex the butt right there so you're stable. Then go to get your big breath. Move easy enough. No, I don't claim to be an expert on the squat, but I feel like my technique is pretty decent. Right here before I unrack, when the bar is where I want it on my back, get that one last big breath, explode up with it, like I'm going to squat out a really heavy weight. For me, that makes the weight feel really light on my back, or at least I can trick myself into thinking that it's light. Then I take a little tiny step back. Some people try to walk it like a 10-foot step back, and that's not very smart. You're wasting a lot of energy. But I hold that same breath that I had before from the unrack until I get my butt flexed. That way I'm stable and I can hold a lot more weight on top of my body. Then I get another big breath, and that's when I go. When I initiate this descent, I'm not just sticking my ass back, I think I'm pushing my knees out. That makes a lot of room and can help me achieve depth. A lot of guys, when they can't get lower, they'll just bring their back down. That's not going to help you get that depth in a helpful way. When you push your knees out, it allows your body to really get down there. But on the 315, it's not as good. I feel like I could definitely have pushed my knees out a little more, but I'm still happy with it. So since that went well enough, I went up to 335 for my next attempt. Again, the same thing's going through my mind, just going through that routine. Flex my butt, get ready to go. As you can see, a little more of a struggle, but I still got the weight. And since that 335 moved a little slower than I wanted it to, I decided to not go right away to 365 and try 355 instead for the next attempt. And notice it says attempt. That's a very key word, as you'll see in a few seconds. Because all this time is trying to get that big belly breath and really brace my abs. For me, it's a lot harder to maintain that on the squat. That's why I like the belt. It really helps me reinforce that. But as you can see right there, all that breathing didn't help. We start pretty good in the bottom, as you can see. Pretty solid positioning right here. But right as we go up, hips shoot up and the chest falls forward, and right about there is no way I can save that unless I good morning the hell out of this squat, and that's not very good for your back or its well-being. So yeah, throughout this entire little squat, the back position should look exactly how it looks right here. Then there's like a straight line right there. That should be in the same angle all the way up. Now, of course, on the maximal squat, it's going to be a little iffy, but you should still do your best to maintain that. You can try driving your shoulder blades into the bar and at the same time push the floor away. That'll really help keep your torso where it should be. Another thing related to this is keeping your lats engaged in the squat. You do that by trying to pull the bar through the rest of your back all the way to your nipple line. It's a little harder in like a higher bar position like I like to do, but something like a low bar where the bar is like right there in your back, it'll help meld it to your body. It'll also stop your elbows flaring up like that when your torso starts to shift forward. It'll keep the bar more like that, and if you use more of your body, you're going to lift more weight. That's always a good thing. Now into my second attempt at 355. Got the same things all going through my head. Stand that bar up. Right there, I tried even more to get my lats engaged. At the end, it didn't save me. Once again, at the bottom position, I'm in pretty good position right now. As soon as I start to go up, the knees cave in, then I should go straight down. I mentioned pushing your knees out earlier. If I did that more, and they're even further out, they'll have more room to push before they get all the way collapsed in. That's definitely something I can improve on in the future in my squats. And also just getting stronger, you know, but one step at a time. So I decided to drop back at 345. Give it a shot at this. At this point, you're a little mentally discouraged from missing 2 lifts, but you gotta try to fight back. And this guy's very happy. At this point in the lift, I'm pretty sure it was just more about my mindset not being in it rather than the lack of strength. Well, something you can learn from this is, although I did take a shorter jump from 335 to 355 instead of 365, when the weight's moving that slow, maybe a 10-pound jump would be more appropriate than 20. Don't always push your luck. It's good to have that ambition, but sometimes it bites you, and you end up looking like this guy. So yeah, I ended up only getting a 335 squat. Guess that's all that showed up that day. Like I said, I was Zercher 345 earlier, and also a pause squat at 335. So it was a little disappointing, but since I was so happy from getting that, later in the week I decided to come back and load that same weight on a bar and deadlift it. Just to say for my squat, because the deadlift is winning right now. At the same time, since I do have a lower squat, once I get that up, I think it's going to take my other lifts and really explode them. Like the deadlifts is going to shoot up after I get that squat for 4s and low 5s. Same thing with stuff like overhead press, where you use your leg drives, because a lot of that stuff comes from the quads. I end up getting 12 reps here, and like the shirt says, nobody cares, work harder. You got to get after when the squat has really hit the poverty zone. Now let me show you my old bench PRs. So the conventional best I did was 260 back in November. Got a little iffy right there, but still powered through it. Lift off messed me up a bit. And earlier in the program, I lifted 265 with a close grip. Went up easy enough. So that's pretty good. Now into bench testing day. Now I started off at 245 as the first weight that I really recorded. This is one of those weights where you can tell by judging on the speed how the day's gonna go. So you can see, this is decent. I've definitely moved it faster before, so I still expect to do some good things this day, even if it wasn't going as fast as I possibly could have moved it. You also may have noticed that I unracked a bar by myself. It's something I've always preferred to do. Whenever I have somebody lift it off for me on a big weight like this, I always feel like the bar gets out of the groove, and I'd rather blame myself for getting in the bar in a shitty position than having to blame my friend, who's usually the guy spotting me. At the same time though, if you practice a lift off, do that. Don't do something you haven't practiced before, especially when it comes to a heavy weight. But when you're doing this by yourself, you want to keep the J-cups a little lower so you don't have to overextend. If you did that and you had to push your shoulders up just to get the bar out, you're going to ruin your foundation. You worked so hard in your setup to get your shoulders nice and tight, or at least you should have. There's no sense in trying to undo that right now. Another thing, if you're going to lift by yourself, make sure you set these little safety catch bars to a point where even if you drop the bar, it's not going to land on your face. I like my face, I'm sure you like yours, so let's not do that. So now that the bar is unracked, there are three main cues that I usually use for this lift. And the first one is to try to actively row the bar down to my body instead of just letting it fall. I'd rather control the weight instead of letting the weight control me. The second big thing is while I'm rowing it down my body, to make sure my elbows are a little bit tucked. You don't want them all the way out there, and you don't want them all the way against your side. Trying to find a nice little Goldilocks zone where you can engage as much muscle as possible, and still have room for it to flare out on the way up. My third cue has to do with leg drive, and a lot of people misunderstand this. They'll just try to lift their ass up off the bench and do something. That's not how you're supposed to do it. You want to try and imagine using your legs to push yourself north on the bench. That'll help you use more of your body, and when you use more of your body, you're going to add more weight to the bar. That is never a bad thing. Now on to 255. So as you can see, it's pretty decent. One thing I would like to fix is the fact that when I'm applying my leg drive, the rest of my body gets a little shaky, as you'll see. Also, when I'm moving around, jostling, is this wasted energy that's not going into the bar. Ideally, you'd like your legs to just push straight back without having to move back and forth. Like I said, that's wasted energy. That's pounds you're not getting out of your lift. Before I show you how 265 went this day, let's just go back to November and see how it moved. As you can see, it went pretty far. I mean, like a whole, what is that, like 2-3 inches off my chest, as you can clearly see right there. That's very impressive. Now moving on to my 265 attempt, and let me tell you, this is an interesting lift. You'll see what I mean in a few seconds. Which is interesting to me. And like I said, you'll see what's going to go on. Going. So at some point, my brain decided, don't just keep pushing up, you're almost there. Let's try to cheat it and put it in that J-cup. But apparently the left arm did not get that message. We can clearly see by this beautiful thing going on right there. I like to tell myself at this point that if I didn't bitch out from the lift that I would have made it, but the world will never know. Since I'd like to think that I was close in that last rep, I decided to try it again. And we're going, and we're going, and we're stopped. For literally like a whole minute. Now when we go back to November, we see where the highest this 265 attempt got. We can see it's not too far off my chest. And when we compare this to my most recent attempt at 265, we can see it's a little bit higher up. But this isn't exactly what I meant when I said I wish I could gain 4 inches, so I was a little more disappointed. One thing I would nitpick from this is how shaky the leg drive is. I'm not saying that if I fix this that I would have gotten this. I'm not going to ever know about that, but in the future, if I fix this and don't let it go all shaky and put my leg drive directly back into that bar instead of wasting of energy, I'm definitely going to gain some pounds. So my bench grip is a little bit more on the narrower side, and since I could close grip bench more than I could right here, maybe I could benefit from bringing my grip even more in. Alternatively, maybe I like it a little more out because, like I mentioned earlier a little bit, the arms should start about right there when they're nice and tucked at the bottom, and as they go up, they're going to flare out to involve more of a chest. And if it's right there, that's as far as it can go out. Maybe just a hair wider would allow me to use more. I'm not saying be one of those bro scientists who puts their arms out there and tries to end up tearing a pec, you know. But just a little bit might actually be more beneficial. Sometimes changing your bench grip can lead to you pushing more weight. You just have to kind of experiment with it and don't just stick with one thing. Once you do find where you can produce the most force, I'd probably stay there. Since my sticking point is right in the little mid-range of motion right here, the way I can fix this is by finding a way to overload the movement. I can either do this by using a board right there, so I can only bench that much, use more weight. You do the same thing, you set the pins a little higher up, like right there. Put down to a dead stop, push up off of them. Another great way to break through this little area is with bands. because you have rubber bands going up to there. It's going to be light in your chest, but as you go up, it's going to weigh more and more. That's going to help you drive through that range of motion and become explosive through that range of motion. Obviously, I can keep getting my triceps stronger, but everything I can do to get my chest even bigger is do more weighted dips. It's a great way to build up a lot of strength throughout this entire range of motion in the bench, and it's pretty impressive to do too. So, that's a good reason.
It's a mindset, Jeff!